And so when I hear people bringing to the table after me having a personal experience and trying both sides, like, oh, but like this is plant-based is the most optimal and it prevents illness, and this paper, and go to these doctors and whatever, I'm just like, that means nothing to me, because like I've tried it and it made me sick, and so now I'm here. Hello internet, I am Morgan May and this is my second YouTube video. So welcome. I just posted my first video a few days ago about my journey going from being a 20-year vegetarian vegan to now carnivore and kind of healing my body with meat. And so it actually started an interesting conversation that I wanted to expound on in this video, and that is about the power of belief and vegan guilt and how they're kind of interrelated. But before we get into it, this is what all YouTubers do. Before we get into it, please don't forget to subscribe if you like hearing stories about personal transformation, content about personal development, and also follow me on Instagram if you want more content or updates at the Morgan May. So I just posted my first video a few days ago, and it was the story about my personal experience going from 20 years vegetarian vegan, the negative impacts that had on my body, and transitioning now to carnivore so I could heal my body, and the positive effects that I've been experiencing now, like eating carnivore. It was interesting in the comments, which thank you everyone who left comments. You know, I love debating and understanding how other people think, so it's always engaging for me, but it really made me start thinking critically, or I think it was a good example of what I see happening a lot in the culture, and that is sometimes I don't feel like critical thinking and questioning things is necessarily fostered in the culture. And I think that shows up in ways like, in the face of a very personal experience. Not only one experience, by the way, like there's people transitioning from being vegan to eating meat in droves. If you just do any search, on YouTube, you'll see a lot of stories like mine, about people who started experiencing the deterioration of their health and having to explore other options and other diets, other ways of living. In the face of that, in the face of like these personal stories and truth, I mean, it's not like I'm not crazy. It's not like, these droves of people are just crazy or making this up. You know what I mean? It's like valid data because it's my experience, and like I can trust my own experience. In the face of that, there's a lot of maybe people still in the paradigm or with certain belief structures that come to the table with, but this doctor, go visit a doctor, a holistic vegan doctor, these studies, you know what I mean? All of these, it's actually kind of a logical fallacy. It's an appeal to authority, meaning that they're like insisting that a claim is true just because an authority says it's true. In general today, I mean, this is across the board in science and in research. I used to be in research and academic research. I'm now in strategy, so I'm constantly doing research for work. It's more often than not that a study that is published is biased and publishes biased data, and or is funded by special interest groups. Like, this is just known, in research. That's just what it is. And so to negate somebody's personal experience or our own personal experiences in lieu or because of, authority says this, it doesn't make any sense necessarily. And I think it's a testament on the true power of belief. I'm just going to jump in here. I originally had wanted to support this argument using a personal anecdote from my life of a time where I trusted authority and followed it, not thinking I had any other options. And I turned out to be wrong. The authority that I was following turned out to be massively wrong. And it, had a major impact on my life. Instead of that, I mean, it was long, and I think I'm going to save it for another video. It doesn't really fit in here. But I want to just use some examples throughout history of times where authority was definitely wrong, and, it might have fared us well to question it, just as we should be questioning everything and thinking critically, thinking freely and for ourselves. The first of which is the heartbreaking opioid epidemic. Opioids had originally been marketed as being non-addictive, which we know now is horribly false. And not only are they highly addictive, they're highly deadly. I think the body count for the opioid epidemic is at about 500,000 at this point. Another example is cigarettes. I mean, these have been recommended by doctors and dentists in the past. It was not uncommon for pregnant women to smoke, and now we know the horrible health complications of that decades later. And, not to mention that, there have been several medications that have gone to market after the FDA, another authority, approved them and have had to be recalled and taken off the market because they were not safe. So there are several other examples. I mean, the whole thing with grains being at the bottom of the food pyramid, that is ridiculous, and just the grains are not that vital for our diet. Soy having been touted as a viable alternative to protein when it's a huge endocrine disruptor. It is a phytoestrogen and increases the risk of breast cancer. It's a GMO. It's just like horrible. So I could go off, but I actually encourage anyone, if you guys have any input, if you guys have any examples, please leave them in the comments. I love it. I love the discussion. So definitely give me your worst with those. All of that to support the argument that we really do need to trust our own personal experiences, the trends in the culture that maybe the mainstream isn't talking about, like, thousands of vegans now switching to eating meat because they're nutrient deprived and just not healthy, and really self-experimenting and seeing for yourself. And I'll go on to describe that here. I also really hope you guys appreciate the selection of copyright-free images. Having a very personal experience where my physical health was suffering dramatically, and looking outside of there to other alternatives, which I found in like meat, obviously, and experiencing enormously positive effects from that, like that is valid. I am feeling so much like better than honestly I've ever felt in my entire life. So like that can't be false. And so when I hear people bringing to the table after me having a personal experience and trying both sides, like, oh, but like this is plant-based is the most optimal and it prevents illness, and this paper, and go to these doctors and whatever, I'm just like, that means nothing to me, because like I've tried it and it made me sick, and so now I'm here. And ultimately what that shows me is that when something doesn't fit into our, and I'm speaking for myself too, like, I'm speaking as something other than the vegans commenting in on my videos, because like I'm just not on that side anymore, or like not in that place anymore. But I was with several things in my life. But when something, and so I'll speak as like a human, or someone that has been there, and it's probably still there with other ideologies that I haven't found yet. But when sometimes when we're listening to somebody else's experience and it doesn't fit into our paradigm, we write it off in lieu of what, right? In lieu of the medical institution, in lieu of, research. Both of those totally have the propensity to like be wrong, or like emotion, which, by the way, like that was the impetus for me getting into vegetarian veganism. And I can tell you now, after that experience and after personal experience in my life, like when you, and trust me, I am a highly sensitive person, deeply, deeply emotional. Like when you lead with that and you allow yourself to like have no filter of like critical thinking and logic, you are so much easier to be manipulated, like so much more easily manipulated. And so it's just like, it just because you feel like with your emotions, right? Not like the physical state of your body, just because you feel like something is right. Like emotions lie to you all of the time. Like, especially if women or men, anyone, when we're in love, right, and this person is like the end all be all and we're gonna like marry them, like, and they're actually maybe a shitty person or not treating us that well, or they're not it, we don't end up getting married and it wasn't a good fit, but we were like blinded by our feelings. Like that happens constantly with these ideologies that are being pushed today in the culture, and with the way, frankly, that like the media delivers us information. Like the truth is that beyond like mainstream media and all of these studies that have a propensity to be biased, and all of these doctors that were, learned from these potentially biased studies and research and whatever, not only biased but potentially funded by special interests, like beyond all of that, we cannot ignore the fact that there are like hundreds or thousands of human beings who have tried it for a long period of time. These research studies, like 6 weeks is like a typical time to like study, engage in an experiment or in study. So it's just like 6 weeks, maybe 3 months, you know what I mean? Like a lot of these vegans have done this lifestyle or participated in it for years. Like I was a strict vegan, plant-based vegan for 3 years, and like I got sick and now I'm eating meat. And so we can't ignore that. That is qualitative, valid data. And just because it wasn't conducted in a lab and controlled and whatever doesn't negate the fact that it's real and that like it has been my experience. And like I literally, like, okay, plant-based had all of these health issues, meat only basically, or like 90%, and like all of these issues are being rectified and I'm experiencing even more benefit. So it all goes to show the true power of belief. And we can see this in phenomena like the placebo effect. When we believe that like a little sugar pill is the antidote to whatever ailment we're trying to remedy, we literally even if it's a sugar pill, we with our minds heal our body because we believe. Like the power of belief is profound. One of the most powerful forces on the planet. And it could be used for good, like healing your body, or it could be used in the opposite effect of keeping us stuck in systems that no longer serve us or don't serve us to begin with, or never, the intention was never really to serve us. For me, that has been several things in my life, veganism included. And so with that being said, it's so important to question even our most fundamental beliefs. Like veganism arguably was like my first belief structure. It's the oldest one that I've had. I don't think I have believed anything necessarily since I was 10, you know what I mean? Like for 20 years. And so we have to humble ourselves for ourselves and question everything, even things that we believed, and like not be afraid of being wrong because it's scary. The idea of me eating meat was terrifying. Like I was like viscerally terrified of beef. Like the thought of it, I knew my body wanted it, but like I said with that story, like I lost it when I had an opportunity to eat it, and I tried to like push myself to do it because I was scared of it. So it's not easy all the time, but we have to do it. Otherwise, we get stuck, and especially in systems that potentially are not the truth. This is also a trend that I see not only with veganism, but a lot of ideologies that are really being pushed in the mainstream, maybe more progressive ideologies. They have two things in common typically. One, they prey on our emotions. So in the vegan movement, with documentaries like Forks Over Knives and What the Health, and various articles and different influencers, like they're using emotion and like animal cruelty and making you feel so bad for these abused animals and mistreated and inhumanely kept animals, and then so much guilt and shame for then eating it. You must be a monster. And the second thing is that they actively work against natural order and how we are naturally wired. And I see this with, again, a lot of progressive movements, and I see it with veganism. Like we are wired, it is a fact, just one data point I'll use to exemplify this. The human body breaks down meat and the nutrients found in meat way easier than those of plants, and the nutrients in the meat in this food is far more bioavailable than the nutrients found in plants. This is why that most vegans are nutrient deficient, even if they're eating, like I was, 20 different supplements a day. My body can't absorb those supplements, the nutrients from those supplements, like it can from meat. That to me shows me that my body is optimized eating meat, that it was built to consume meat. And so this movement of veganism and this kind of fake food, like Beyond Burgers and whatever, with like 50 different ingredients, that's just not meat, but it mimics meat, you know? And all of these other vegan foods that like mimic meat, it works against the way that we're naturally, we are wired to eat meat. Like we are the apex predators of this planet, whether we like it or not. If I were to like design Earth, right, like would I make it so that, you know, I had to kill or take a life to survive? Maybe I wouldn't. Like maybe it wouldn't be my first choice, right? Like maybe that doesn't like feel ideal to me. I would like to not kill something to like survive, but that's just how it is. And like I have to respect that because I have to respect myself and what I need and put that first. And that being said, like that's exactly what I use to assuage vegan guilt. Like I said this in my last video, but with all of this being said, once I like woke up to like the ideology and the flaws in it, and because I felt the difference in my body, because I self-experimented and I didn't listen to this paradigm and I listened to myself and like what my body physically needed, and I like also, so that's my subjective experience, but also objectively on paper wasn't doing well. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's just, I wasn't thriving, and just experimenting and seeing how I felt for over a month, and then seeing all the positive impacts that came of this experience, like that to me shows me that I am meant to eat this, that actually I can't just substitute my protein and my nutrients for plants or things that don't take a life, because I tried it and I got sick. So like there's no other choice for me to live my best life and feel my best other than eating meat. I can't be evil for that. Like that's how God made me, frankly. Like that's how I'm like wired to operate. That's how my body works. Like I tried it. I was vegan for long enough in a healthy enough context with all of the supplementation and everything, and I wasn't doing well. So that shows me that like that's impossible for me to like be really healthy and happy in that lifestyle, and therefore it can't be bad for me to be eating meat. It can't be evil. It has to happen. And because of that, what I did was I found ethical means of sourcing meat. So not all meat is like mass produced animals in cages and, you know, shot with hormones and antibiotics. No, like that is mass produced meat. I don't eat Tyson. I don't eat McDonald's. Like I eat free range, grass fed, organic beef. I live in Colorado. There's a ton of like locally sourced butcher shops here that I absolutely opt into first and foremost. So like that just shows you that there are means of ethically living as like an empathetic feeling being, but like not being a dumbass, frankly, and just like omitting the one thing that we need the most, you know? Like to me, the answer isn't to like omit meat because, you know, I feel bad for the animals and whatever, and I don't agree with how they're being treated or raised. The answer is, okay, I need meat, so I can't omit them. What's like, what are my other options? You know, like ethically sourced meat. That has been my experience in all of this. I really encourage everybody to question everything, to think critically, to experiment on yourself, to trust your own experiences, to be brave enough to look outside of the paradigms that we have been living in, and to try other things. Like that's one of my biggest regrets. I never looked anywhere else. Like all of my information was fed to me from biased sources, and you know what I mean? And just like one side of it. And I never thought to like look to the other side. I mean, granted, I was very emotionally manipulated, honestly, and like had that drive to kind of stay on one side. But, you know, I think we owe it to ourselves and our health and our bodies. And, you know, our ultimate like purpose here on the planet to do that. Thank you all for watching. Again, don't forget to subscribe. Follow me on Instagram at the Morgan May, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.